The road was silent except for the hum of the tires and the low whistle of wind against the glass. The sun had barely begun to rise, and the world was wrapped in that rare, golden stillness that exists just before morning takes full control. In that stillness, the RV rolled on, old enough to have stories, strong enough to keep chasing more. They called it the Quiet Revolution, not because it was loud or defiant, but because it represented something deeper, a rebellion against noise, chaos, and the rush that had consumed modern life. The man behind the wheel, Ethan, wasn't running from anyone. He was running toward something, though he didn't quite know what. His life back in the city had been a blur of emails, meetings, and deadlines. Success had filled his pockets but emptied his soul. When his reflection in the mirror began to look like a stranger's, he realized he needed to go somewhere that didn't require Wi-Fi to feel alive. So one morning, without ceremony, he packed his RV with the essentials: tools, books, camera, coffee beans, and left behind everything that had made him feel trapped. The first few miles were strange, like walking after forgetting how to use your legs. The city skyline shrank behind him and the air smelled different, cleaner, wilder. There was no destination marked on the map, only a sense that wherever he ended up it would be better than where he'd been. The RV itself seemed alive, like it knew the rhythm of freedom. The dashboard light flickered softly, the engine purred with steady confidence, and the open road stretched ahead like an unspoken promise. By noon, Ethan had driven far enough that phone signals disappeared and silence took its place. He parked by a small lake, sunlight dancing across its surface like liquid glass. The air was cool, the kind that makes you breathe deeper without realizing. He stepped outside and felt something he hadn't in years. Peace without purpose. No notifications, no obligations. Just the quiet hum of nature existing effortlessly. He brewed a cup of coffee on the small gas stove and sat on a folding chair outside the RV. The aroma of roasted beans mingled with pine and morning dew. As he sipped, he watched ducks glide across the lake, leaving trails that vanished moments later. It was then he realized this was the revolution. Not a war fought with noise or fire, but with stillness and intention. A revolution of presence, of choosing simplicity in a world that worships chaos. As the days rolled into one another, Ethan's life began to shift. He found rhythm in the small things, waking with the sunrise, driving until the light began to fade, cooking meals from scratch and ending nights under a sky scattered with stars. Each morning he'd write a few thoughts in a leather journal. At first his entries were filled with confusion and restlessness, but as time passed the words softened. He no longer wrote about what he had left behind, but about what he was discovering along the way. He learned the language of silence. The soft chirp of crickets at dusk became a song. The rustling of leaves felt like whispers of an ancient world. The stars above were no longer distant, they felt like company. One evening, while parked near the edge of a vast desert, he stood outside and watched the horizon burn orange and red as the sun dipped below it. The colors didn't rush. They unfolded slowly, deliberately, as if the universe was reminding him that not everything needs to move fast to be beautiful. A week later, in a remote mountain town, Ethan met a couple who had been living in their van for 3 years. They were painters, nomads who traded art for food, stories for smiles. They invited him to share a fire, and as they talked beneath a canopy of stars, he realized how many others had joined this quiet movement. People who had traded ambition for authenticity, who measured wealth in time and peace instead of money. They weren't escaping life, they were rediscovering it. The couple told him about a hidden valley several hours north, where the air was crisp and the night so clear that the Milky Way painted the sky like a living mural. Ethan drove there the next morning, guided only by instinct and the old compass his father had given him long ago. The road wound through forests and cliffs, testing both his patience and the RV's endurance. When he finally arrived, he found a meadow blanketed in wildflowers, a stream murmuring softly nearby, and mountains standing tall like silent guardians. He parked, stepped out, and felt the earth steady beneath his feet. The sky was impossibly blue. He could hear the heartbeat of the world in the gentle wind. That night, as he sat by the fire, he thought about how strange it was that we spend our lives trying to get ahead, only to realize that what we were chasing had been around us all along. He stayed in that valley for several days. Mornings began with birdsong, afternoons with exploration, evenings with reflection. He found himself talking aloud sometimes, not out of loneliness but gratitude. Each day was a gift unwrapped slowly. He cooked simple meals, washed in the stream, and slept like a man unburdened. On the 5th day, a storm rolled in from the west. The wind howled, rain lashed against the RV, and thunder echoed through the valley like ancient drums. For the first time in weeks, fear flickered in his chest. He thought about turning back, about how easy it would be to retreat to comfort. But something inside him refused. He stayed, listening to the storm rage and fade, trusting that peace could exist even in the heart of chaos. When the morning came, everything sparkled. The grass glistened with raindrops, the air was sharp and clean, and the sun broke through clouds with blinding grace. That morning changed something in him. The storm had tested not his strength but his surrender. It taught him that peace wasn't the absence of storms. It was learning to stand still in their midst. Weeks turned into months. The RV became a moving home, carrying not just supplies but memories. Stickers from small towns decorated the cupboards. Postcards from strangers hung by the window. Ethan's beard grew, his eyes softened. He had fewer possessions but more clarity. Every place he visited added a layer to his story. A conversation with a fisherman by the coast, a night spent watching fireflies in a forest clearing, a cup of tea shared with a lonely innkeeper who hadn't seen a traveler in weeks. Somewhere along the way, he stopped trying to define where he was going. The destination had ceased to matter. The journey itself was the destination. Every sunrise was a new beginning. Every sunset a quiet reminder that life, too, was fleeting and precious. One evening, while parked atop a cliff overlooking the ocean, Ethan set up his camera to capture the fading light. As he reviewed the footage, he realized the camera had been pointed inward, reflecting his face, calm, content, alive. It struck him that the man in that frame was no longer searching for meaning. He had found it in motion, in stillness, in solitude, and in connection. He had become part of something larger, a quiet revolution that didn't demand attention, but invited reflection. When the night grew cold, he wrapped himself in a blanket, listening to waves crash against the rocks below. The stars shimmered, endless and patient. He thought of all the people still trapped in the noise of cities, chasing the illusion of success. He wished he could tell them that freedom isn't somewhere out there. It begins the moment you stop running from yourself. He smiled, whispering into the wind. The revolution isn't loud. It's quiet. It happens when you finally hear your own heart again. By the time dawn arrived, the world was painted gold once more. Ethan brewed his coffee, packed his things, and turned the ignition. The RV rumbled awake, ready for another day of endless discovery. He didn't know where the road would lead, but that uncertainty was no longer frightening. It was beautiful. As the horizon stretched ahead, he realized that every mile was a prayer, every breath a reminder of why he had left in the first place. To live deliberately, to breathe freely, to remember that silence is not emptiness but truth. The road wound on, sun rising higher, shadows stretching long behind him. The revolution continued, not in noise, not in battle, but in the quiet hum of an engine, the steady rhythm of a wandering soul. and the whisper of the wind saying, "Keep going." Because sometimes the loudest way to change your life is to live it quietly. If this journey speaks to you, hit subscribe and come right along. There's room for you here, because on the road we all fit.